Hi everyone, welcome to Pop Pop's Train Room. I'm Pop Pop. We're going to talk about today how to build a train table. I know a lot of people have already had train tables. Hopefully this might help you if maybe you're going to add on to your train table too, or you might be a beginner and this will be very helpful for you even before you start building your train table. The main thing I wanted to talk about is the construction of the train table. A lot of people use 2x3s, 2x4s, dimensional lumber. I tend to find that they, over time, or even when you first start building it, they twist. And you put the whole thing together, you put your plywood on top, and you got your track, and all of a sudden there's bumps and things are moving a lot. So what I found is using actually 5/4 by 3 primed pine. So it's pine and not Douglas fir like 2x4s, okay? And what this actually is, they don't make 5/4 by 3, they make 5/4 by 6. And I set up the table saw and I cut everything in half. So instead of using a 2x3, I'm using this for the dimension. It measures 1 1/8 by 2.5, 2 3/4, okay? So I find this is very strong. The reason why I like to use it, why it's strong, is the manufacturer actually uses scrap pieces of pine and they glue and finger join it all together, all the scrap pieces, and they glue it together and they actually flip, I'm not going to say the grain, but they flip where if you look at a board, it has the grain is going upwards or downwards, say, the cupping of it, where that's what happens with 2x4s. They tend to cup and twist. The manufacturer actually takes all the scrap pieces and they flip that cupping. So some are cupped up and some are cupped down. And then they finger join it and glue it all together so it is so strong and stays so true and straight. So that's the reason why I love using this material. And then, so my main frame, you would go around with your main frame, and then your legs also would be in the corners and going down to your floor. If your table was the other option, your table, like this, my table is mounted to the wall over here. But if this was smaller and I had wheels or casters on the bottom, I would highly recommend on your legs that you do a diagonal support for that, okay? But basically I like to use also for the framing part is using pocket holes. And to get that, you have a pocket hole jig. There's a lot of different manufacturers out there, different ones. This actually is a Craig pocket hole jig, okay? And you basically put your wood in, clamp it, take your drill bit that comes with the jig and you drill, and it makes a pocket hole. And what a pocket hole is a lot of furniture makers, cabinet makers use pocket holes to anchor their things. So if we just take a moment, I'll just show you with it, and then you use the proper screws. These are actually, for this size wood, is 1 1/4 coarse thread screws. And what you would do first would be take some of your wood glue. You put your wood glue in. And now, of course, these pieces would be longer. And you would screw all the 3 screws in. Okay? Put all 3 screws in with your glue. And then every 16 inches, you do another one. So now these are long. Maybe your table's 5 foot deep, 8 foot deep. And you do these every 16, and then your legs coming down. A very, very strong system, and it stays true is what I like. So then on top of that, what I like to use is 1/2 inch plywood, and this is 1/2 inch CDX, it's called. You could use 1/2 inch AC, where the top is A grade and the bottom is C grade. I think it's a little waste of time, especially if you're going to do a lot of landscaping, doing all your different mountains and things and gluing on. You don't need AC. So this is actually 1/2 inch CDX. So this side is C, the other side is, I guess it's D. I don't know what the X stands for, but that's the name of it. And I find the plywood is very strong because I'm going to do the joists or the beams every 16. And a lot of times you're kneeling and walking up on top of it. So it keeps it strong. Okay, and then what I like to do, if you have that on top, I like actually to build a skirt board also, as you can see here, going around. So I actually use 1/4 inch Luan plywood. It comes 4x8, but again, you set up the table saw and I rip it down. So then this would go on the edge, finishing off your table nicely. And what's great about it is I like to use a lot of toggle switches and your other buttons to operate things. And you can mount them very easy. You could do your labels and you have room to run your wires behind and you're not gonna see it. In the beginning, when I first started, actually my other train room is the first one I started to drill holes all through the beams to run my wires. And after a while, you run out of room or you're weakening the strength of the table. So what I found was very simple, is just get this all different types of clamps like this for plumbing, electrical. There's all different types of clamps, but something like this, you screw this up underneath the table and then you can start running your wires through that. And talk about wires, I like to use very simple to get a hold of at the local lumber yards is speaker wire. It comes in different gauges. You could also use phone wire, or you could buy on Amazon and in different places you could buy different types of wires. But I tend to just use speaker wire. It's easy to get a hold of. So you got all these clamps underneath. You're running your wires going around, and all of a sudden you might run out of room. They make the clamps even larger. All right. So then on top, you have your framework. You have your plywood on top, and then some people like to use the foam on top of the plywood. So you have your framework, your plywood, and then your foam board. There's different foam boards to use. This one's like a 2 inch. And you could glue this right on top of the plywood. And then some people have done is you actually take your tools and you could gouge out the center. There's different ways to do that. You could use tools like this that they vibrate to dig out. Very handy. Or you could even use, if you wanted to, I've seen people actually use electric carving knife that you carve the turkey for Thanksgiving with, and you can actually use that, and that will carve the styrofoam. And a lot of times what you do, if you cut and carve that out, don't throw these away, save them, because then you could put some glue again and glue it on the platform so you get your different dimensions. And you could gouge out and do a stream. All right, and then the other step I wanted to talk about was on top of all this, okay, on top of all that, I like to use Homosote for my soundproofing for under my track. So again, it comes a 4x8 sheet, it's 1/2 inch thick, and I set up the table saw and I cut strips. All right, and then what I did is I took those strips and I beveled it with a router. Yeah, I'm not very prepared here. All right, I need a bigger table to work with, I think. But I have a router table, and you can set this type of bit up with your chamfer on it or angle on it. There's roundovers you can use. And I set that up and I run this through my router table and I put a little bevel on it. And I like it. It works really well. Now, in this type of situation, you end up gluing this on the foam. Or here, I did not use the foam, but I would end up screwing it down to the plywood. And then you could screw your track down and go all the way through the Homosote down into your plywood. So it's very strong. And then after that, I put the ballast, all your bushes and greenery, which this I haven't got to that point yet. I'm still working on doing some minor wiring a little bit. But then after that, I think I'm ready to start doing my landscaping and all my ballast work. When it came to doing your curves with the Homosote, I ended up cutting a bigger piece, tracing the track, whatever size curve you were using. If you're using 027, 036, 042, trace it, cut it out with a jigsaw, and then I ran that piece also through my router table. And so, you know, you have your straights, but you have your curves, you got your pieces shaped like your switches. It just works out really. It's a lot of work setting up the table saw, doing all that ripping, because I know there's other products out there, different cork type of bedding you could use. So there's a lot of different options on that. Hopefully, I think, oh, the other option, just to show you, I was showing you the piece with the toggle switch in it on the face. You can also just do something simple and add coming out off and have your toggle switches and your different buttons on something like that too. You can mount something on your table for the different switches. I kind of like having, if you could see, I have a lot of different switches and they're labeled. The grandkids love coming down. I have my main transformers that I'm running the trains. There's some switches and buttons over there for me to turn on, but the kids all line up and they watch, and they love pressing all the different buttons and making different things go on. The latest was I have the flag moving with the fan, but they come down and they're pressing the buttons, they're blowing the whistles. It just adds to the excitement instead of me just over there running the train, controlling all the buttons. I keep adding and adding more buttons for the grandkids to enjoy. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful. The basic thing was I was trying to tell people other options instead of using 2x3s, 2x4s, that dimensional lumber. It's a very, very good product. If you happen to be in New Jersey, I bought this at the local lumber yard, Stelton Lumber, on Stelton Road in Piscataway, New Jersey. It's a great product. Like I said, I used my table saw to rip it. The local lumber yard, he would probably rip it in half if you had some lengths, because it comes 16-foot long lengths that you got to work with. So you might end up taking that 16-foot, cut it to 8-foot lengths first, easier to work with if you wanted to rip it down. But in some sections, maybe you needed a 14-foot long length, so you had that option of having all one piece for strength. Hopefully this helps you out. Any comments or questions, leave it in the comment section. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.